So can we, in fact, go into this time in a way that is calm, that is responsible, that is also hospitable?
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Louisiana NOW podcast. I am your host, Todd Rossnagel, Director of Communications for the Louisiana Conference. Thanks so much for joining us on this episode of the Louisiana NOW podcast. It is great to have everyone along with us. Our guest today is Bishop Cynthia Fierro Harvey. A lot to ask her about and a lot to discuss. We recently had a chance to go over all of it, from the re-entry guidelines to plans for the postponed and soon-to-be, hopefully, rescheduled annual conference, her installment as president of the Council of Bishops, and a whole lot more. But we began our conversation with more on the re-entry guidelines. Louisiana Governor John Bel Edwards recently announced that Louisiana can indeed enter Phase 1. And with that came the potentiality for churches to regather together inside sanctuaries. However, Bishop Harvey has asked for all United Methodist churches to wait until at least the end of May before they regather. One of the first points that Bishop Harvey wanted to make is that an entire team of people, led by Dr. Van Stinson at the conference office, together with doctors, pastors, and experts from all across the state, did this hard work.
I think it's really important for United Methodists across the state of Louisiana to understand that I didn't make this decision in a vacuum. We consulted with physicians. We looked at the CDC guidelines. We looked at what churches were preparing to do. We consulted with pastors, with business managers. So I didn't make this decision by myself. I really made it in consultation with a lot of people and a lot of information that was available to me. So while people might say, well, the governor said that we could meet, and yes, he did, but we are in a very different place than most of the economy and most of the establishments that are referenced in Phase 1. I still kind of rely on that first general rule of do no harm. And I really believe that these 2 weeks between now and May 31st will just help us prepare. And by the way, May 31st is Pentecost Sunday. What an incredible day to regather as God's people, if in fact it's responsible at that point to gather as God's people. But I think about these 2 weeks, and it is mind-boggling to begin to even think about what it might look like for us to go back into our sanctuaries for worship. From the 25% occupancy rule that is now in Phase 1, well, I might know the capacity, 25% of the capacity of my sanctuary, but does that look like when you put people 6 feet apart? And those are just the beginnings of this. What do you do about having enough hand sanitizer, enough masks? Are we ready for that? And I think these 2 weeks are an important time for us to be sure that we're ready, to in fact be able to be hospitable. I mean, that's what we do here. We talk about hospitality and welcoming the stranger and welcoming our people into our churches. And what if your capacity is 200, let's say, at 25%? What do you say to the 201st person coming into the sanctuary? I cannot even begin to fathom especially when I think about reaching out and welcoming the stranger. What do we say to the people that are coming back to church for the first time? Can we do that in a way that's responsible? There's nothing more painful than to say, let's not worship for another 2 weeks. That's not my preference, but I believe it's the right thing to do.
Bishop, it's been about 2 months now, and we are, some of the pastors out there have just now started to kind of figure this online thing out. And here we are with the possibility of regathering again, and they're going to have to learn something entirely new yet again. My bet is that there are some who are just flat out exhausted. Church leaders, staff, pastors, what would be your message to those who are just exhausted right now?
Well, I have suggested that's also, I will say, this period of time that even though the phase one might take effect on the 15th, it would give about 2 weeks for our pastors and our lay people and all of those people that work to make worship happen, give them a chance to just breathe for a moment and prepare for this. I suggested to our pastors that if they need a break, I recognize that the learning curve has been steep and they've got to be exhausted. And so for them to contact their superintendent, let us know if you need a break. Any of us can step in and preach for you one Sunday or do anything that we can to support you. But this 2-week period, I think, will give us some time to just say, okay, now we're going to learn how to do the next thing, right? We're learning as we're going. And I think it's also important that we decide, what are we going to continue to do? We have reached more people in online worship than ever before. I pray that we don't stop just because we're going to go back into our buildings. I think that would be just a tragic error of judgment. But I think that if we could, in fact, use 2 weeks, use the time to prepare, are we ready? And just to go back for a second on those guidelines, I don't want to, I recognize that there are people who absolutely strongly believe in their rights to do whatever. My right to wear or not wear a mask, my right to, I get it, I know, I understand, but what's the right thing to do? I pray that those who feel like, this is my right, that they will actually consider what is the right thing to do. And being a good neighbor means that we will be responsible. Can we do contact tracing? I mean, how will we in fact handle all of those details? This 2 weeks will do that for us, will give us some time to prepare, and it will also give perhaps our pastors a moment to use some space, take some Sabbath when they can, and just try to go into this next phase with a sense of calm, because I think that our people will know if we're anxious. They always do. So can we, in fact, go into this time in a way that is calm, that is responsible, that is also hospitable? Now, that's my other piece of all of this, and returning back into our spaces of worship is hospitality. That's what we're known for, right? And that's in our DNA. How can we be hospitable to that person that says, no, I didn't bring a mask? Well, the basket over here, 6 feet away, there are masks for you. Feel free to keep it and bring it back next Sunday. I mean, there are ways to do this in a way that is not dogmatic, like the 10 Commandments kind of thing, but, just some guidance for our people. This is going to be new for our congregations as much as it is going to be for us. And frankly, I'm also concerned for those people that may not be ready to return to worship. So there is no right or wrong here. It is whatever you are actually ready to do in this time.
You were recently installed as president of the Council of Bishops, and congratulations on that. You knew for some time that day was coming, but I bet you never thought that you would be installed via a Zoom meeting. Take us back in time and what that was like.
I never imagined, actually, that it would happen via Zoom. And not only did we have the 66 active bishops, but the retired bishops and really the world watching. And in many ways, it was just a little bit more nerve-wracking, because not only was the world watching, but we were doing it on this new platform. And I had pre-recorded my message in preparation for that moment. And somewhere about 2/3 of the way through, Zoom and video don't always like each other. And so my video froze, and thanks to God that I had my manuscript in front of me, and I picked it up right at that point. And it probably couldn't have happened in a better place. And frankly, finishing it live might have been better than even the recorded message. So I never imagined it would happen. And I will just say that Zoom with 128 bishops from around the world works. It really did work. We had a few glitches, but nothing that we cannot overcome. And it's exciting to see us embrace this new technology. Even at a moment like this. So we'll have a chance to celebrate in person, I hope, at some point. But for now, the work has begun. That afternoon, I was back on another Zoom to prepare for the next 2 years. So it's an exciting time to lead the church. It's also a terrifying time to lead the church. But I am so thankful that I have great colleagues to travel this journey with at this time, and consider it an incredible privilege to be able to lead the church during this time.
Well, Bishop Harvey, in that address to the COB, it was called Breakfast is Ready. And you shared the story of how Jesus prepared breakfast that one morning for the disciples, explaining how Jesus, I think you said, didn't just pull together a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but was very intentional about preparing breakfast, and how Jesus was ready and is ready, and how that all ties into this thing we call the hope of Easter. Just listen to this little portion of your address to the Council of Bishops and our audience at home. And by the way, we'll include a link to Bishop Harvey's full address to the Council of Bishops in the show notes of this page. Meanwhile, here's a brief portion of that.
I'm absolutely certain that Jesus is already there, waiting for us. Jesus was so sure that he had already prepared breakfast. He didn't make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. He prepared a feast, fish and bread. Neither is quick. The meal took time to prepare. He started preparing this meal long before the disciples came to shore. I'm sure the fish had to be caught and cleaned, and although the bread was probably not unleavened and he didn't have to wait for it to rise in proof, he didn't just buy it at the corner market. The wheat had to be milled, the water, milk, eggs, all that stuff had to be fetched from somewhere. And then the bread had to be baked. This was not just thrown together at the last minute. Jesus had breakfast ready. He was ready for them. And he's ready for us. Ready to feed us today and all of our tomorrows in the midst of bewilderment, exhaustion, the unknown, and the unprecedented. This is what Easter hope is all about. A hope that Jesus is ready for us, even in the unknown. Even in the unknown. Breakfast is ready.
It was a powerful message. Do you have hope, Bishop, that Jesus is still preparing something for us?
Oh, not only do I have hope, I am confident that Jesus is preparing the way. And I continue to remind myself and others that Jesus has already been there. We just have to have eyes to see where we need to go. But it is, I love that story from John because I think that what's so clear is, like you said, he didn't just throw this together. It wasn't just happenstance. He had to prepare the fish and the bread, and it was ready when the disciples came to shore. So there was this notion that he knew what they needed at that moment. They needed breakfast. They'd been working all night. They needed to be fed. And the notion that he was already there waiting for them, that wasn't happenstance. He was waiting for them. And I firmly believe that Jesus has prepared the way for us as individuals, for the United Methodist Church, and for our congregations. We just need to have our eyes wide open to be able to see the movement of the Spirit.
We're back with more with our conversation with Bishop Cynthia Fierro Harvey. In just a moment, we'll talk about annual conference that is coming up. But first, a word from our sponsor, the United Methodist Foundation of Louisiana. Ever since the pandemic, many people are giving thought to their estate planning. Well, the foundation has a free 5-week seminar by mail that is available by request. Each lesson in the United Methodist Foundation of Louisiana's free estate planning course is written by a Louisiana tax and estate planning attorney and offers information specific to our unique state. When you complete the course, you'll receive a free booklet, Protecting Your Legacy, a guide to planning your will and your trust. It's all free. Start creating your legacy today. You can find out more information by heading to their website, umf.org. Back now to our conversation with Bishop Cynthia Fierro Harvey. The pandemic postponed annual conference, which was originally scheduled for June in Shreveport. But as a result of the postponement, Bishop Harvey is now asking all of us to hold a few different dates, either September 19th or November 20th in Baton Rouge. So the question is, why are we holding 2 different dates?
I don't know where we will be on September 19th, which is the first date, and the other is in November 20th. I don't know how comfortable we'll be in being together. The annual conference, the delegates make up a little about 800 or so people. I don't know if we'll be in a position from the governor or even from our own standpoint as a church to put 800 people in a room. And so I decided that we should have 2 dates. We should set them aside. And it is a much shorter, more compressed time period. We're usually together for a much longer time. So we will take care of the business that we have to actually take care of at an annual conference. We will do ordination on Friday night, so the day before. And then we'll regather on Saturday, and we will have our opening, our memorial service. We'll honor our retirees, take care of the budget, and all of the business of the annual conference that has to happen at annual conference. But having these 2 dates gives us a plan A and a plan B. I hope we don't need to have a plan C and D. I don't know. But just from my standpoint of how comfortable and confident are we that we can put that many people in one room at one time? And the reason for Baton Rouge is because First Methodist in Baton Rouge can hold the delegates in the sanctuary, for example, and then it has enough other larger spaces that should we need to put observers in other places that we can do that. And maybe we might just have to meet just the delegates in the sanctuary with using those auxiliary spaces for guests and observers. So we've got a plan for all the possibilities at this point, and I didn't want to contract with another hotel or a convention center because I didn't want to tie us to that, not knowing what might happen. And so that's our plan right now. It could change. Things are changing very rapidly. Every day is a new day and something different comes up each day. So that is our current understanding of having those 2 dates and having it in Baton Rouge at First Methodist and having ordination. This is ordination and commissioning and licensing, our service where we celebrate ministry all across the board. We're going to do that on Friday evening to allow hopefully those persons to be ordained and commissioned to have family gathered for that as well. But again, we don't know based on how many people we can actually put in a space comfortably and safely.
While things are changing, perhaps will change, one thing that won't change with regard to annual conference is the theme. And Bishop Harvey, the more I think about the theme that was created several years ago, together in love, day after day, nothing says more about where we need to be as a community than together in love, day after day.
And that text says, I will be with you In some translations, it says till the end of the age, I will be with you day after day after day is from the Message. Either of those translations are so appropriate for this year, this time. And so I don't know if we were prophetic or lucky. I'd like to think it's a God thing, that luck had nothing to do with it. Again, back to the breakfast. Maybe Jesus knew exactly where we needed to be. And he knew because he'd already been here. So we're going to gather and we're going to celebrate. We're going to celebrate being together and celebrate that God is with us day after day after day.
Bishop Harvey, our final question here. It is May, and May is graduation month. It is a month that is reserved for those moments when students are celebrated for their graduation. So many students and young people throughout our conference are going to be perhaps disappointed that their senior year ended this way. Can you share an encouraging word for the young graduates out there?
You know, I cannot even begin to imagine the disappointment. High school seniors, college graduates, people earning their doctorate. So many of our clergy have earned their doctorate and aren't going to be able to be present at a graduation. That's a huge accomplishment at any level. And so I regret that this has happened, but I think that this will go down in history for so many of us of how responsible people have been. I serve on a couple of university and college boards, and trust me, that was a very hard decision to make, to not actually have a commencement. And so I pray that there'll be a time that people can gather and celebrate. I also know that there's been so much work done for people to celebrate the graduations in different ways. I was watching the news the other night, and there was like a drive-through graduation where, they would drive up and they would say, Todd Rossnagel, and Todd Rossnagel gets out of the car, takes the diploma, and walks off. And they did that one at a time. And teachers, principals going to students' houses and putting signs in yards. And in my own neighborhood, there was photographs, like big photos of all the graduating seniors as you came in on the boulevard. People went to a lot of work to honor those who were graduated, and I hope that does not go unnoticed. But I know that it's got to be disappointing, and these are milestone events in people's lives, and I pray that one day we might look back and say, remember graduation in 2020, the class of 2020. It was a very different time for all of us.
Bishop Harvey, we thank you so very much for your time. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
If you would like more information on the re-entry guidelines, you can head to our website, www.la-umc.org. And if you'd like more information on annual conference, when it will be scheduled, and what that schedule may look like, you can also head to our website and sign up for the Louisiana Now newsletter. And of course, you can always subscribe to this podcast. As we get more information, we will, of course, share it right here on the Louisiana Now podcast. For Mary Burley, our producer, the foundation, our sponsor, this is your host, Todd Rossnagel. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, Jesus is calling on us to stay together in love and reminding us that the love of God will be with us day after day.